Hi, I'm Evie, and this year for CrabCon, instead of talking about hermit crab shells like I normally do, I am going to do a presentation on building an inexpensive, easy 2x4 framed tank stand. I have been doing woodworking for a few years now. I've made a bunch of pieces of furniture and of course a few tank stands. I think like 8 to 10 now, from 20-gallon tanks to over 200-gallon tanks with toppers. So this project is going to be for a 29-gallon tank, and all of the material and cost for the hardware is about a third of the price of the cheapest tank stand I was able to find at my local pet store. I am hoping that people who've considered doing this, that may have been intimidated by it, see that with just a few basic tools, not a lot of skill, it's fairly easy to put together a good, sturdy, inexpensive tank stand that you can just put some paint on and call done, or do a little bit more elaborate finishing and have something that looks like a real piece of furniture in your home that'll support all the way to the substrate and be just the right height for what you need. Thank you for watching. This is the first stand I ever built. It was originally for my son's 40-gallon breeder. It has since been repurposed a few times, but has made a very sturdy, practical table for multiple purposes. This next stand was originally designed to hold a 75-gallon front opening terrarium with a 20-gallon tank below and storage in between. It has been repurposed for a 75-gallon tank with a 75-gallon topper. The bottom became storage for crab food and other accessories. It's almost too tall for this arrangement, but it's still practical. Although it looks really complicated, this design utilized the basic construction methods I will be detailing in this video and was dressed up simply with finished grade plywood and basic trim from my local Lowe's. The third stand supports a 125-gallon tank. This tank came with an unstable, unsightly homemade stand cobbled together with bad wood and weak screws. I added 2x4s where necessary to support the tank and stabilize the base. I added finished grade plywood to the outside and simple trim to dress it up. A quick coat of paint and it became what it is today. This is the final tank stand to share. It was designed to hold a 220 and 230-gallon tank, butted up to make an L shape. The two tanks varied in height, which complicated the build slightly. It was crucial for the tanks to be level at the top to seamlessly support the 150-gallon topper. Like so many projects in life, this one made it to the 90% completion mark and no further. The plan was to add some more trim and paint it. Time got away from us and we had to call it good enough to house the crabs in foster care. Although the last three tank stands vary in dimensions, storage space, and finish work, they all started with the same basic frame that we'll be doing today. For planning, I like to do a rough three-dimensional sketch of the tank and mark all of the dimensions. The tank's frame, the black plastic holding the glass, is what needs to be supported. Nothing needs to be under the glass. All of the weight of your crab habitat will be supported by the black frame. These dimensions are critical for your build. Once you mark up the dimensions of your tank, you need to determine the height and dimensions of the stand. Ask yourself, where do I want this tank in my home? Will I be adding a topper? What viewing height would be best? Do I want the crabs higher than my nosy dog or clumsy toddler? When the substrate is added, how high should the tank be to make servicing it easy? You might end up measuring up to your armpit and finding the ideal height. Spend time on these considerations and make sure you're content before finalizing your stand design and buying material. Now that you've decided on the overall dimensions of your tank stand, how do you plan to finish it and what features do you want to add? Are you wanting to go with the most cost-effective basic design, or do you want to incorporate storage, a finished tabletop, cabinet doors, drawers, trim, etc.? Play around with the design and draw up a finished plan. Check the website of your local hardware store to see what pre-made cabinet doors are available and factor those dimensions into your plan. There are plenty of videos on YouTube to help you create your ultimate tank stand if you want to go all out on your build. For this demonstration, I am using this 29-gallon tank and building a basic, inexpensive frame. I spent $9.48 for screws and $18.20 for lumber for a total of $27.68. To finish the stand on a budget, you could fill the screw holes, sand the wood, and add a coat of latex paint. For initial planning and all through the construction, you must have a tape measure. You can pick these up for as little as $4. An easy way to make sure your stand is square is to use a speed square. They are available in multiple sizes, but a 7-inch is ideal. They're around $10 at the hardware store. You must have a drill for this project. You can get one at Harbor Freight for as little as $30. You'll need a drill bit to make pilot holes in the wood before setting your screws. Buy one that matches the size of the screws you selected. If you are cutting or sanding wood, make sure to use eye protection. You'll need a miter or circular saw, although with some creativity you can make do without these. Your local hardware store may provide wood cutting services. This panel saw at Lowe's can rip plywood to size and will even cut 2x4 lumber down to your specifications. Don't forget to bring your cut list to the store. For a tank stand, it is very important to get straight 2x4 lumber. Check your boards in the store before purchase. Hold them to your face and sight down both sides of the board. If the sides are not parallel and the board is crooked, you will be able to see. In this image, you can see how the end of the board curls off to the right. You do not want this board. If you're not comfortable selecting wood this way, a quick cheat is to grab a level from the store and hold it to the wood. If the level makes contact all along the narrow edge, it will make good contact with your tank frame. Holding the level to the wide part of the board will make sure it isn't bowed anywhere. You want nice boards for this project. While you're at the lumber store, check on options for finishing your tank stand. Thin Luan sheets are inexpensive, easy to attach, and have a nice finish. You can stain or paint this material. For a sturdy, gorgeous finish, something that looks like nice furniture, you can use birch plywood. Just avoid lower grades of plywood typically used for construction. These sheets have a lot of knots, uneven grain, and will not look nice even if coated in latex paint. OSB, seen here, is not a good choice for a decorative finish. I prefer to wait on buying trim until the entire frame is completed and covered, but now is a good time to look around at the available trim options and get some creative ideas. Baseboard, quarter round, chair rail, and other decorative trim pieces make it really easy to dress up the look of your project. To give you an idea of what trim pieces can turn into, this headboard was constructed from a few different pieces of trim. Assuming you're cutting the wood yourself, keep your cut list next to the saw. Mark your board using the tape measure. Use your speed square to mark your cut line across the face of the board. Then cut your first board and mark it as a template. Use this board to cut every identical board on the cut list. Once you're done making all of your cuts, or you get home from having the store cut the lumber for you, it's time to start assembling the tank stand. Before you get started, check to make sure your top frame fits on your aquarium. If you mess it up like I did, you can fix it now. After going back to the saw, we're ready to assemble. Use a square to make sure your boards are attached squarely. If your boards have some defects like this one, figure out the best arrangement to conceal it. To assemble the tank, hold the boards together with the square to make sure they are properly aligned. Then drill your pilot holes. You need to attach each board with 2 screws. Set the screws and then move on to the next attachment point until you have completed your top frame. With the top frame complete, it is time to check and make sure it fits perfectly on your tank. If it does, continue on to assembling the next identical frame. You should now have 2 identical boxes. Stack the 2 boxes and start attaching the upright boards. I find it easier to keep them stacked. Fasten the bottom one, turn it over, slide the second frame down, and then fasten that one to the upright boards. Before moving on, I am checking the measurements between the top and bottom frame for the vertical supports. If your top and bottom frame aren't set just right, you can remove the screws and adjust the frames on the upright boards. I take a level and make sure the 4 boards of the top frame are flush. If they're not perfectly flush, your tank will not be properly supported and may crack when the tank settles under the weight of the substrate. We're not done yet, but this frame is already very sturdy. Now it's time to move on and attach the vertical supports. Without these vertical supports, only the screws are bearing the weight of your crab habitat. You want to make sure these boards are very, very tight. You might need to trim, sand, or pound them into place to make sure they're snug all the way around. This small tank won't weigh much with substrate, but larger tanks will hold hundreds of pounds. To finish the vertical supports, dry fit the boards into place, making sure every board is properly placed and snug. Drive screws into the top and bottom of the board. Countersink the screws to ensure they are fully set and making it easier to finish the stand. You can fill these screw holes with putty or attach plywood to the frame. With the final boards in place, the tank stand is now done. The bottom frame is flush with the floor. The top frame is level, and the boards that support the frame are flush. The upright boards might be slightly above the top frame. This is okay. As long as they are not more than a 1/4 inch above the top frame, they should not interfere with the bottom glass of the tank. When it comes to this project, not just any screw will do. I strongly recommend getting 2.5-inch number 9 construction screws shown here. Do not use drywall screws. They are not meant to support the heft of the crab habitat. I mentioned selecting the correct drill bit for making pilot holes. The drill bit should be the width of the shank, leaving the threads exposed. This prevents splitting the wood, but allows the screw to adequately bite into the wood. When it comes to planning and calculating dimensions, keep in mind a 2x4 is not 2 inches by 4 inches. The actual dimensions are 3.5 inches by 1.5 inches. Also, pay close attention to the 2x4s you are buying. There are 2x4x8s, which are a full 8 foot long or 96 inches. There are also 2x4 studs, which may only be 92 and 5/8 inch long. You might come up short on your cut list if you planned for 96 inches and bought the shorter 2x4 studs. I like to draw the planned cuts on lines representing an 8-foot board. Planning the cuts this way makes sure you get the most out of each board. It also eliminates waste and prevents coming up short on material. To help with your project planning, you are free to use these scaled drawings and mark them with your measurements. For the top and bottom frames, shown in the lightest colors on this drawing, take the length of your tank and figure out how much longer the frame boards need to be. I added 3/4 of an inch to the length of my tank to provide a slight reveal. You can cut yours to be flush with the sides of the tank. Just be careful not to extend these lengths too far, leaving the shorter sides of your tank frame unsupported. Calculate the narrow side of the top frame, remembering that the thickness of your boards is 1.5 inches. You need 4 boards cut to the adjusted length of your tank and 6 boards cut to the adjusted depth of your tank. The 2 additional boards will be centered in the top and bottom frames. These additional boards aren't necessary in smaller builds, but it doesn't hurt to add them and they likely won't increase your material cost. The upright boards, shown here in darker brown, should be cut to the finished height of your tank stand. I measured up to my armpit and decided I wanted the top of my tank, when it's on the stand, to be at 43 inches. My tank is 18 3/4 inches high, so subtracting that from the 43 inches overall height leaves me with 24 1/4 inches for the upright boards. You need 4 of these. For the vertical supports, you need to subtract the 3.5 inch width of the top and bottom frames for a total of 7 inches. For this example, my uprights are 24 1/4 inches. Subtracting 7 gives me the 17 1/4 inch measurement for my vertical supports. You need 8 of these boards. I recommend waiting to buy and cut your finishing materials until your stand is complete. You might find that your stand isn't exactly perfect, and the luan or plywood should be cut to accommodate these variations in dimensions. I hope you found this presentation helpful and inspiring. It might seem overwhelming to tackle a project like this, but if you do decide to try it, you're likely to find it's not so bad. I love building tank stands for the cost savings, the flexibility in design, and the ability to have something that fits our unique needs. Hey, Kathy. Hi, Charlotte. To build the one that was in the demonstration, I think it took a little over an hour. But the finish work on a tank stand, that's where I spend most of the time. Initially, that just the basic frame, you can knock that out pretty quickly, but the finish work, I like to triple check my measurements and, put the effort into the finish work and the trim. Oh, Charlotte, you should be good to make a wood tank stand. I would imagine wood is so much easier than welding. Okay, she doesn't think welding is harder than woodworking. I've had to hire welders, so I've seen good work and bad work. And, once you find a good professional, you stick with them if you need welding done. A little off topic. I had one welder, they did some like 90-degree angles, and the welds were so sloppy. They actually had really sharp points that would cut you. Um, so, yeah, I have a lot of respect for welders. Well, thank you. I try to not be too basic on it, but make it looks a lot more intimidating than it is. I found that with most of the furniture I've built. Like my son's bed, I made a twin size bed for him with storage underneath. And once you get into it, it's really not that hard. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I already got some requests for the PDF. If anybody missed that, I'll just put my email here. Um, and I will send you. I said PDF, but it might be JPEGs or some other image. But I can send you all of the. I can send you all of the drawings that my husband did, and so you guys can help, or that'll help you guys put your thing together. So I'll put that. So my email is info@Hermit Harbor, and if you send a request there, I'll send you um, that document. The cost of materials, I think with the wood and the screws, it was like $24 for everything. And the time to build was a little over an hour. So if it's your first time, it'll probably take you a little longer than that. And if you don't have the right power tools, it'll definitely add time. But yeah, it was around $20. Valerie might remember. I told her how much it was. A lot cheaper than you can get a regular stand, the cheaper, not so nice stands at like Petco. And what inspired me to start building things? I wanted to make furniture, and I started off with pallet wood. I got into that little bit of I don't know if anybody ever paid attention, the weird things you can make with pallet wood, but I made some outdoor tables. If you guys do get into pallet wood, watch out for the warnings on the off gassing or whatever, since they ship chemicals on pallets. Um, but if you do get into the pallet woods, just make sure you're not putting things in your house, or you get pallets that haven't been used. But pallet wood projects are fun, and you can pick them up for free and get your start in woodworking. But I wanted to make a bed for my son that fit perfectly under the window. So, like this headboard behind me, kind of blocks the window. I wanted it under the windowsill. So, building it myself, I was able to add storage and make it just the right height to fit in this little alcove, kind of like this one has the little cutout. Um, and from there, I just kept building stuff. And then when the crab situation with all their needs came along, it just worked out really well. Best said, stands are so expensive. Yes, they are. But another thing, if you don't want to build your own, you can find them on Facebook Marketplace. And sometimes with the cheaper stands, um, in my video, the one that has the really pretty pale blue color, it came with that really crappy stand. It had bad screws. It was missing boards. It needed the reinforcements. That that whole combination, I think I paid $200 for the tank and the stand. But if you end up with a stand like that, you can improve it just the way I did. So all the skills that you would have learned doing your own stand from that video, you can apply those to rehabbing a poorer quality stand. You might be able to make do with the bad wood, and they had drywall screws. You don't want to use drywall screws. So does anybody plan on building a stand after watching this? All right, good. Charlotte's going to do it. Yeah, and you guys will find the larger the stands, like my 220 and 230, if you guys get into upgrading your tanks to something that big, just go and look at the price for tank stands. I kind of feel like most people that are doing that do build their own stands because they are so expensive. I saw some that are like $11,000, which is just absolutely insane to me. I kind of feel like I should sit here and ramble. Nobody seems to have questions. Um, let's see, just add anything to this if I can think of it. Oh, there are ways to get cheaper wood. You can find Facebook Marketplace. Some people have scraps that might be the right size. So you can look out for like the finish wood. You might be able to find something there. And somebody isn't specifically stand related. Have you found you need to reinforce your floor foundation? So personally, I do not. My house we're in Florida. It is on a slab foundation, so I just have solid concrete. There are some considerations though, if you do have a joist floor system. One of the things that you want to make sure the joists run, a certain direction in your house. You don't want I'm going to try hard to describe this. So your joists, they're set at a certain spacing, so many inches on center. If your stand happens to sit where it's not fully supported on the joists and you have your stand running parallel with your joists, that can be problematic. So try and figure out which way your joists run. So if your joists are running this way, get your stand to go that way. You might want to consult a contractor if you're doing a really, really big stand, a really big tank, and have them assess your house to see if you should have some concerns with your subfloor and your joists underneath. What's the biggest mistake in building your own stand? Personally, I've not had a big mistake except for cutting one of the finish boards the wrong dimensions. That's another reason when I recommended waiting till your frame was finished. If you're really unsure, sometimes I get mixed up in my mind with measurements, and that's why I always, they say measure twice, cut once. I'll do it more than that, but you can also go. So if here's your stand, you can just go and lay your finish board over and mark your cut, and that'll make sure that you're not cutting it to the wrong size. And also, I call it sneaking up on it. If you're not quite sure, cut it and then set it up. And then if you find you've got to trim a little bit more, just trim a little bit more. Overconfidence has caused me some issues where I just go all in and cut the board and then realize, oh, yeah, I forgot about that 1/4 inch gap that needed to cover, and now my board's too short and I got to start over again. That's another benefit in doing the finished trim on the corners. So the one stand that has the topper, it's a 75 gallon with a 75 gallon topper. I put the finished trim on the corners. That will conceal that edge, especially plywood. If you guys look at plywood, the face is pretty, but the side has the striations from the different layers. It'll conceal that, putting the piece of cap on there. Yeah, that's the cat. And she's actually putting her foot under the door and shaking it. So let me let her in. Come on. Yeah, there's the cat. Yeah, I was wondering if they were going to post in the Q&A section or just the chat, but it looked like most people were just doing the chat. Yeah, she is pretty. She came to me a few years ago. She was hiding under the hood of my car, and my sister heard a cat, and I said, "No, you didn't. I don't want a cat." And yeah, we still have her. So she can be sweet. So, whoever is planning on building a stand, what is your biggest fear? Like, what are you worried that you might screw up? We'll try and help you get some confidence to just jump in and do it. Charlotte says cutting the wood wrong. You mean like the wrong dimensions, or yeah, to the wrong length? Play with that diagram. Go ahead and email me to get that and play with that, and then double and triple check your dimensions. I do better with a visual, and like the where I drew out the lines and marked the board cuts. I just sit with a calculator, and if I've got 17 and a half inches and I know I need 6 of them, just draw them out, add it up to make sure. And if you do that, keep in mind it's called kerf, but your blade, it's an 1/8 inch. So when you cut something, you lose an 1/8 inch off your board. So if you're cutting your boards and you have very, very little room for cutoff and waste, that 1/8 inch kerf from your saw blade might cause you some problems. Could you add storage for baskets underneath? That's my requirement for a stand. Yes, you absolutely can. In fact, I'm going to take you guys for a walk. You'll have to pardon the mess, but this stand right here, so I got those little baskets in there, and so I just put these in here. These are, I think, at the dollar store. And then I had this at one point for food storage. And then down here, when I initially built this, I had this built for a 20-gallon tank. It was going to be my hospital tank. And then I was breeding roaches at one point for the whatever. We don't need to go into the roach breeding. But now I just keep all my foods down here in their little containers. But yeah, you can go and incorporate for different storage options. So this is kind of my catch-all clutter area right now. Okay, so you're worried about using the saw. And I would recommend, if you've never used a saw, either a table saw or a miter saw, watch some videos, because there is a significant safety concern. Yes, PPE, but also some people, like, you're focusing on your board and you get it set up there and you didn't pay attention to where your thumb is. So make sure that you're following. So for example, we'll just use the miter saw. Watch some videos on how people that are professionals do this. They have some safety techniques. And if you have a really short board, don't try and run that through the miter saw because your fingers will be too close and the miter saw can kick the wood. And then you might slip. You might just nick your finger on the blade as you're going up. So make sure you have enough length on the board that your hand is farther away from the saw blade. Yes, definitely no drinking and sawing. And is it cheaper to build your stand yourself versus buying it? Yes, absolutely. If you already have the power tools, now one thing I learned the hard way, I thought it would be cheaper to build furniture until I started buying the power tools to do it. I have a whole workshop full of like all kinds of fancy tools, and it has cost thousands. I could have furnished the whole house for what I paid in the power tools, but it's become a fun hobby. So if you just have the basic power tools that I showed in the video, the miter saw and then a drill, that's pretty much all you need. But do watch videos on how people build things. It doesn't necessarily have to be a tank stand, but you might be able to find a YouTube video on miter saw safety. That'll give you some tips and things to think about and keep in mind while you're doing the work. I have not yet ever cut myself. And I actually bought one of the fancier table saws that if you're ever curious, if anybody has like a husband or somebody that does this, have them look up Saw Stop. It has, it detects your skin when it's operating, and it has a brake that comes up, catches the blade, stops it, and it will drop the blade below the table. So look up just for fun if you get bored. But yeah, the Saw Stop is really cool. I invested in that because I work with my hands, and if I lose a hand or finger or whatever, I'm out of business. Yeah, always wear eye protection. That is that's something a lot of people overlook, and sometimes I'll flip it up on my head and then forget to put them back down. Always use eye protection. The saw, even though it's spinning towards you and kicking stuff towards the back of it, you can still get some debris, and you'll end up with wood debris in your eye. So always just put some eye protection on. Ear protection, the stuff isn't that loud, but if you want to be safe, definitely do that. Yes, I would recommend sanding the wood before you paint. And it doesn't have to be, it really depends on what kind of finish you want. If you're just using lumber, lumber isn't really meant to be furniture grade. So it's going to still look a little rough, but definitely at least take an 80 or 120 and scuff the edges and smooth them. So where you have so if this is your board, if you just take a sanding block, and it can just be a block of 2x4 with a piece of sandpaper around it, just set it on a diagonal and sand like that, and you'll get an eased edge. But I would sand around the screw holes. So if you go back and watch the video where I showed where you countersink, you'll see there is some little bits of wood that's kicked out. That'll give you a splinter, and it'll also be harder to paint. A latex paint, like wall paint, is really cheap, really easy to use. It will fill some of the grain and smooth out the wood. Stain is going to just highlight any wood grain and pattern. But a latex paint, you can just put that on there. I've seen some people, they like black. Really kind of goes with everything. Just get some black latex paint, roll that on there, get a brush to kind of like smash it in. It's called end grain. On a board, you have the face with the long grain, and on the end, it's real pitted looking. The end grain, you want to just kind of like smack it in there with the brush and pack it in there. Or a really thick nap. When you go to buy a paint roller, there's nap lengths, and a longer nap will work the paint into more textured surfaces like wood. Yeah, wood has increased. The worst was during COVID when they weren't bringing it in. I saw the price of lumber went up like 4 or 5 times. I don't remember what it was, but it was insane. And I had a remodel project I was doing. I was like, darn it, just a few months late. If I had done it a little earlier, it would have cost so much less. Oh, and I'm surprised nobody's asked about using cedar. My little tip about finding wood on Facebook, you may occasionally find cedar boards on there. I don't know why, but they usually come up. Um, that should be okay for the crab tank. And it has a nice smell, and the wood pattern, the wood grain is really pretty. My favorite power tool, well, it really depends on what I'm doing. I love my Sawzall. I love my angle grinder. Um, the multi-tool is a great power tool. But my favorite tool that I'm like really proud and like really, really happy I have is probably my SawStop table saw. Let's see. Yeah, the storage question, I walked them out there and showed them that one tank with all my storage baskets. Oh, Michaela used cedar. Yeah, it's a really pretty wood and it smells nice. I had a friend, she wanted a cedar headboard, and she found somebody had used it to rebuild their barn and also some fencing. So we had to run it through the planer um, to get it all like smoothed out and everything. Um, but it made a really pretty headboard. It was heavy. That wood is really dense and it's heavy. You can have a cedar board and a pine board, and cedar is much heavier. Ooh, how much does a tank stand weigh? I'm really bad at guessing weights, but I say, well, actually, hey Siri, how much does a 2 by 4 by 8 pine board weigh?
2 times 4 times 8 is 64.
Oh, that's not the right answer. That's not the question. Um, my best guess would be maybe like 30 pounds. So a pine stud, which is a 2 by 4, and that's the one that's like 92 inches or whatever. It says it's between 1.2 and 2.5 pounds. So we'll just say 2 pounds. So 2 by 7. I think I had 7 boards on there. 14 pounds. So using cedar for a tank stand, because the crabs won't come in contact with it, and their tank, if properly done, should be sealed. It should be fine. It should be fine for that. Yeah, so Michaela used the 6 by 6 for the legs. The one stand, the first one I made, I used 4 by 4 posts for the legs. That one was hard. I don't recommend that. It's really hard to get a flush cut for the feet. But another thing that would help is putting those little felt pads, because that'll help adjust some of it as it's sitting on the floor. Um, but yeah, I did have some scrap 2 by 6s laying around, and I've used those before as well. When it's on the inside of the tank, you can't even tell, and it doesn't affect because the boards are placed this way and not this way. Um, Instead of 4 or the 3.5, you're at 5.5 inches. So if you just have some wood laying around, that'll work, and you just kind of smash it all together, it'll be fine. Um, So I learned to do all of this through YouTube University, all just researching on my own. I found it fascinating. And there's this one website that produces furniture. It's Anna White. She produced, well, it's not just her, other people go and make furniture plans, and they're free. You can download them. Some of them are off. You definitely want to double check the measurements, but there's a lot of inspiration there. And so yeah, I just had an interest in doing it and wanted to do it and just got into making that. Another thing that also inspired it, I used to keep chickens until they all got picked off by predators, but building chicken coops. And those are a lot of fun, and you got to kind of figure things out. Yep, Anna White. Yeah, and then I had to get comfortable with pneumatic tools to set nails and staples for the chicken wire. I hate that part. Fender washers are great for if you ever have to attach chicken wire to something, just screw in through a fender washer. Oh, and Michaela said she's going to be modifying it when she moves. Another thing that I like about these, if you ever have to move them, you can partially disassemble them by just removing the screws and move it wherever you need to go. If it needs to go up, a flight of stairs and it's too big and cumbersome, you can partially disassemble it. Just keep all the screws that you initially used and reset them into the screw holes. It should be fine. My next project, I am not sure. I have a lot of unfinished projects that I should probably wrap up. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure what my next project will be. The last one we did, my husband, he does the RPG, like Warhammer. Some of you guys might have um, like Dungeons and Dragons, but he built this huge table, and we made that for doing the little miniature war games. But yeah, once you get into woodworking, there's so many things that you can make. One of my favorite projects, I made a little table for the porch. It has a removable lid, and you can set a basin there for a little bucket to hold ice. So if you want to sit out there and just shove your bottle of wine in the ice and enjoy it on the porch, I made that out of pallet wood. Michaela, that's funny. I actually wanted to donate that crab stand or the tank stand to CrabCon. I was hoping to be able to make it, but I didn't. But I even thought of that we could just flatten it, send it. I don't know what freight would be, shipping on that would be. Probably not too much. So I might do that. I do not sell any of my woodworking stuff. We recently started doing I made little hermit crab figurines out of resin and hand paint them. I started selling those in my Etsy store that I don't advertise as mine. Hermit Harbor is my primary store, but I had a bunch of shells that they're the weird random shells that not all crabs love, but I figured I'll sell them on Etsy, and it's crabs and crafts. So I make little miniature hermit crabs. And I just commissioned with a designer to make a realistic hermit crab, but we're having to work out the 3D printing has it's finicky. So you got to dial some stuff in. We're still working on getting that dialed in to get a good print, but I'm looking forward to painting those. They are modeled after strawberry hermit crabs. Yeah, strawberries are gorgeous. I love their eyes. Yeah, the one I most look forward to finishing is actually, oh, no, wait, I forgot. I am going to build, we have a guinea pig that needs um, I would like to do a raised stand. She's in any of you that keep guinea pigs. I'm sure you've seen where you can use these panels and then some of that coroplast and make a guinea pig cage. So I want to make a raised platform because she's just sitting on the floor now. I want to make a raised platform and use FRP, fiberglass reinforced panels, and make a nice furniture looking one and move her into the crab room. And that way she'll be a little higher up, easier to appreciate and take care of, and she'll be in the crab room. Right now she's just in this weird hallway space and kind of in the way. And then I would like to finish that, the 220 and 230. We never finished that. It wouldn't be too hard now. I'll probably just paint it and be done with it. So yeah, the unfinished project would be that big crab stand. Yeah, we have a lot of animals, so there's always animal stuff. Like the rabbit that keeps chewing things. I'll probably have to work on that at some point and probably replace some panels in the hutch that he likes to gnaw on. So does anybody have any other questions before we wrap up? I think we're out of time in 2 minutes. And if anybody thinks of anything after this, feel free to send me an email. It's posted at the top. Feel free to send me an email. I'd be happy to help you figure out which way to go or direct you to YouTube videos that might be of assistance in whatever you're trying to tackle. I do not move my tanks with sand in them. I have had to move tanks, but once they're in their place, if they ever have to move, I take all the sand out and then move them. The crab stands, turning them on end and setting them on a furniture dolly, super easy to move them, even the big, huge ones that I could crawl into. Well, I'm glad you guys enjoyed that. And yeah, send me an email if you think of anything else. And I hope you do get to trying some woodworking projects and realize that it's really not that hard and it's kind of fun. And then you'll be amazed at what kind of stuff you can make. All right, well, you guys enjoy the rest of CrabCon. Thank you, Beth. I appreciate that. And Charlotte, I really appreciate the positive feedback. Yeah, the cat she's needy. She's a pest. All right, well, we're officially on break, so I'll let you guys go, and I'll start responding to messages probably at the end of the weekend. I've been getting a bunch of orders now, so I'll be working on that. Yep, she's a tortie with the stereotypical behavior of a tortie, but she's cute. All right, well, I'm going to log out. And again, just send me an email if you have any questions, or you can find me on Facebook, Evie Spencer. I'm in some of the groups, Lycos, obviously. Feel free to send a message on there as well. Thank you, guys.